How did you use media technologies in the construction and research, planning and evaluation stages? So if we go to our research and planning, let me go to it. We identified who we are as a production company. So as a production company, we got, well, I personally had contact with a indie game developer who were open for us to use their name and work under them as a film production team. So we took a professional approach with it, because we know many studios are owned by bigger companies. It's, for example, they're seen as a third party developer, for example, that do stuff under their name. So we followed that kind of concept just to show our understanding of how the industry works, because there's not many, like, obviously there are independent studios, but a lot of them are funded by a much larger organisation that owns them. So we worked under Razort Studios, who are owned by Two Sons Entertainment, a indie developer, comprising of 52, I think it is. So we might have more. So yeah, that's just a rough estimate from what I last said when I was doing this portfolio. So yeah, in that page we basically talk about what they are, what we're going to do, and obviously material material they've published, and exactly how they operate. So I mean, yeah, that was a vital step in building our identity as a production team. So once we had our company, basically the foreground, like the foundation put down, and obviously we know how to incorporate ourselves and identify who we are, we then went into our research. So from there we went into like director researches, so research, company research and audience research, and focus groups and stuff like that. And we also got a industry interview with a intern from Microsoft Studios. So we looked at the wider picture of exactly how, like, we were taking a lot of opinions from audiences and many people, that obviously we needed feedback on our own queries for us to be guided into the direction we want to, like the direction into making our material the best possible bit, well, as best as we can, really, especially with what we want to do with it. And we were quite restricted with the idea of our narrative. So yeah, that was a slight boundary we needed to get over. We looked at, like, obviously we looked at various short films, 6 short films, and we analysed them just to exploit and analyse certain, like, really small details like camera work, stuff like that, mise en scène. So that was obviously building our own knowledge on how we can use such things in our own material. So it was, I want to say, it was just looking at a video and just writing down what these are doing. It's more developing our understanding, and for us to identify when we need to use stuff like this, or develop and challenge it, and you like implement it the correct way within our material. So I mean, that was quite a important process to me, especially because I'm not very good at identifying like camera work, stuff like that. It's quite, I don't know. I don't like the relation. You have to find a relationship to like be able to understand why this is being put here. And so I mean, it did develop my own understanding a bit more further. So the development was there. Now we've going on to writing and development. We writ up everything, the ideas and stuff like that, and then we also made a mobile application that wasn't very successful in being publicised, really, because we had a few issues with the programming language, and that kind of sucked. We couldn't get videos uploaded, we couldn't get photos uploaded, and that was the issue with the IDE. Nothing wrong with the programming. It's just the IDE couldn't, like, the IDE is the program we use to program it in, and what it was Visual Studio. And basically it didn't go to plan. It wasn't liking what we were trying to do, and that idea got scrapped. However, we do have like information text, some functions there, and navigation work, and so we're proud to show that off. And obviously we're going to be showing it how we would have used it, really, and how the audience would interact with it. And obviously that was a vital experiment to follow and get done, because like I was saying in my other evaluation, all of us work with mobile devices, digital devices, what can interact with such applications. So almost all people have smartphones, especially in the UK, especially our age, because it seems to be a massive trend. So my generation, let's just look at it as more like a trend, like iPhones and stuff like that, Flash products and all that lot. So we weren't too concerned with people not like having basic Nokias and stuff like that, because obviously they can't get access to it. So the writing development was it was just obviously leading on from our research and planning. So yeah, the development is there, how we use our research and planning to guide us in our writing development. So the relationship we took advantage of, and we displayed that quite well between the two parts of the portfolio. Now back into our ancillary task, we used Photoshop and Illustrator to create our posters. We used various techniques in ensuring it's displaying what we wanted it to. We made it very dull in colour to show it's like depressive. It's quite depressive. Well, I won't say depressive, but it seems a bit isolated, to say the least. And the font of our the font of our short film also gives that idea, because it's thin and it's well spaced, giving the idea of isolation and stuff like that. So font analysing was quite needed, and we did that to obviously we wanted to use the correct font to display what we wanted it to be, what we wanted the poster to give off really. We use a lot of gradients, what cause blur, like as you can see this like it gets blurry from our main character to the left, and that was there just to implement the idea of an adventure being stretched out really. Like the future is a bit uncertain, and as time becomes nearer, the clearer the path gets, and that is a key element within our short film, and I think that was an appropriate use. That was an appropriate use there. So we took advantage of that. Our film magazine wasn't as, I would say, professional as it could have been. None of us were very good at developing like posters, stuff like that. Posters, magazines. We did analyse a few beforehand, and it just didn't work really. I don't think we are graphic design students, all three of us in our production team, and unfortunately we don't handle like magazine covers and stuff like that. It's just photo editing really what we do. And although it did develop us and make us research a lot about film magazines or reviews and how they're laid out. We did look at a layout, we followed the layout, we put the information what was needed. However, the overall look just didn't work, so it wasn't something we were too happy with. We were content with it. We was like, okay, this will do, because we can't really do much with it. We couldn't really improve it because we don't know really how to. We don't have the designer's eye in that particular area or field. We're more like hardcore photo editing like people, instead of just using templates and bringing out information into this template the right way. It's not as easy as it sounds, and it does, especially working from the grounds up. Like we can use a layout of a normal magazine, but it's just obviously not to duplicate that magazine, because that would just we didn't want to do that. So working from the ground up was a bit difficult. There was too much space where text could easily fit up. It wasn't structured well enough, and it just overall didn't work. But yeah, that's exploited one of our areas to improve. So I guess it did have a purpose. We got it done, and we saw where we went wrong, and obviously where we could improve. And I think that's the main purpose of this course, isn't it? To develop ourselves as media students. So it did give us an indication where we need to improve. So yeah, it did have a reasonable purpose and value. It's not just to the portfolio, but to our own understanding and development, and it was a crucial like I said, exploit where we can pick up on and improve if we feel need to. but at the moment we can attempt with it, but we don't feel we have enough time to get it top notched. If you know what I mean. We did use technologies such as YouTube. That was one of the websites that we used throughout all the stages to obviously publish and provide information on our production. It was a valid use because the industry do use it, like big companies and like low costing. It's an efficient way of distributing our material, and it was really good. A good way of documenting our progress as we went along. Group sessions, and then when it came to the actual production, we did do blogs. So we was keeping the interaction there with our audience, and also when we look back at it, we were monitoring what we were doing. Like we could look back at it and oh yeah, this is when this happens, stuff like that. So when we go back over it and have group discussions about our production, we can refer back through our blog, so we can keep on track. So it had a personal use for us as well, and it did help us with our evaluation writing, because we did discuss about everything we did, and the blog was the main way of refreshing us of the process of doing our material, shooting our material. Sorry. So the next would be Prezi. We use Prezi for obviously presentation, PowerPoint, stuff like that. It's a good way of presenting information in a very interesting way. It did have very eye-catching formats within the site, and it had an efficient use in make PowerPoints instead of like using Microsoft PowerPoint, because the interaction was much more. There was much more interaction with it, shall I say. It was much more professional, an efficient way of displaying and distributing information, and it was clear and easy to use, and it wasn't difficult in like adding text, changing text, adding images. I mainly used it in like in my research, because it was an efficient way of displaying it, and when I needed to go back I could obviously look at it, and it was also an efficient way to like make a very productive looking portfolio for my A2 work. So overall it was efficient. It was an efficient media product, and yeah, I quite liked it, to be fair. It had a great use. Wix. Now this is obviously where my blog is. Wix was probably the most efficient way of using this distributing our A2 portfolio instead of sites like Blogger, stuff like that. This was obviously website design. It was a quite nice way of displaying it instead of making it look like a blog. The portfolio was very well made and distributed within the site. The navigation is on point, and I mean, in general, as you can see on my site, we have obviously the research planning, writing development, pre-production, the ancillary, the main task, the evaluation, and so forth. It's very well laid out. It was an efficient way of laying out the information, and it wasn't difficult to use. Like, I didn't like Blogger too much, and that was just a personal point of view from me. It was quite specialised in what we wanted it to do. We had templates, and we worked with templates. Or we could work from the ground up and obviously make mobile apps and stuff like that. And I mean, it was a quite nice tool to use, and I would choose this again if I was to create portfolios again, because the information is simply added. It's well presented if you know what you're doing, and it was in general, turning this website into a blog was a very it was quite creative, shall I say. It was a quite nice journey. I mean, the setup of it all was just long. It wasn't really enjoyable, but once we started using it and putting information up, it started building up excitement, and seeing our portfolio get constructed in the way we wanted it to be was quite a thrilling journey, to be fair. So Wix in general was quite a productive tool in creating a blog, really. Now, equipment we used, let's stay away from the production like props and stuff like that. The actual equipment we actually did use was obviously a Canon 550D camera. Also, we had a tripod to what we didn't really use too much, but it was still it was quite good when we needed to use tilt shots, panning shots, and obviously just very steady shots. We were familiar from them because obviously we had to use them in our the previous year in our AS year portfolio. So it was although it was the same equipment, the development was noticeable in the way we used used and handled the equipment. So it was different. We started going into much more different settings and stuff like that. Just although we didn't use them, we was exploring what the camera could do, and obviously appreciating the functionalities it comes. Appreciating the tools that come with it, and all the functions that allow us to do. Well, just allowed the industry, if you were going to use those functions, you have them there. And I mean, they are very high cost equipment, and also we had to treat them with the utmost respect, and they deserved it with the overall material that they produced. So yeah, we used them quite efficiently. We used Photoshop for our scenery tasks because it was probably the best photo editing software there is. We used Photoshop and Illustrator. Illustrator for the text and just general design of the magazine. We used Photoshop just to construct the just general imagery together, because that's where we was finalising everything. Because we obviously, as graphic students, me, Albert, and Tasir, we knew what we were doing. Although it wasn't as effective as it could have been. The amount of features that Photoshop does produce was undeniably probably the most useful way, or the most useful software to use for what we wanted to do. So I mean, it was good for image formatting and image creation, and although we weren't so much doing that, we was editing. That is the main use for it as well. But we did use Illustrator to do most of the work, and then used Photoshop as the finalizer to get the filters and all the added textures the way we want to, and then really produce the final image from there for the final ancillary task, the poster and magazine. So it was a quite good tool. We used Final Cut Pro, I think it was, to obviously develop our material, so easily put it into the Mac, like to put the SD card into the Mac, and then from there we used Final Cut Pro to edit it, and it was probably the best way. It was much more efficient than something really basic like iMovie and Windows Movie Maker, and it was much more preferred to Sony Vegas because this is an actual industry tool that they use. And I mean, there was a mixture of tools and different ways of experimenting with different outcomes, and it had a lot of functions given to us to use. And although we did explore, we did trial and error a few stuff, and we did experiment in general to make the best possible outcome. But unfortunately, lack of experience in the Final Cut Pro did prove it was evident. Like, there's nothing difficult with editing and putting the move together, but with all the transition, well, not so much transitions because we know what is appropriately used, but using the effects for like flashbacks and stuff like that. I mean, it was quite an explorative and time-consuming process, and in general, there could have been better ways to do the stuff that we've done, and although we didn't have the capability of doing so because it was just. It did seem complex. It was simple for the things we wanted to do, but if we wanted to go into depth and make a very, very well cut final material, well, final production, I mean, experience would have been needed, a lot of experience, and I mean, we can understand why this is used in the industry, because when there's a specialist who knows what they're doing, obviously doing it as a passion, as their passion, as a job role. They will know this software inside out, and obviously we were quite restricted, and when we did need help we used YouTube and obviously the media technician that is obviously operating in our media room. So we did have help when we were stuck, although it was quite minimised because there wasn't too much difficulty in what we wanted to do. So it was a good editing software, and in general we would prefer it over any other video editing software. Now the Apple Mac, once again, nothing too much changed apart from we've used the Mac before, and my opinion stays the same. I don't really encourage myself to use them, but obviously for media, I can't really escape the fact that I do need to use it. I really don't like them. I prefer Windows desktops, but after this year, I understand that my skills got better, and I've developed using them as a tool into doing what I wanted to do. I had a few difficulties with the integration in going from a Windows desktop into a Macintosh, whatever it is, desktop, and it was different. Very uncomfortable at first, but I guess that was the whole point of this, like being pushed out of comfort zone to develop new skills, and this course has done that. So I'm quite comfortable. They offered programs that Windows didn't use, like obviously Final Cut, and in general I can see why they are quite excellent in what they do, especially with the Retina display. So it gave a sharp, crisp display on our material, so we could see as it would be at its finest look. So graphically it was quite nice in the picture. The resolution obviously on point. So I mean, as a tool for what we wanted to do, I would have preferred it than a Windows desktop, because obviously the accessibility to multiple software, just in general, it's a much more efficient. It has a much more efficient use to video editing than a Windows desktop would. So overall, it was a quite productive computer to use, work with, and obviously it did make me learn a lot of new skills. So in general, I'm quite impressed. Overall, I think this has been a very well done year, and I'm quite impressed with the overall outcome.